The mysterious lady. Did you sign up for Kathy's soup for you? Are you doing soup for you? Auction item. Auction item.
What was it?
That soup for you.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe not.
Oh, you would know about it by now. It's next
No,
week.
it's what?
Next week. She would have sent you an email. I've got to show you.
Kathy?
If she didn't send you, then you're not part of the auction.
Okay.
You might not have signed up for that.
There was something on my calendar I noticed.
Oh, really? Check.
What date? Was it like a Friday?
Is that time? No, it's Saturday.
I think maybe I have, but I'm not sure.
I'll ask her. Right, yes, yeah, ask her.
Did you
Yeah, right, I do. I have an electric car, so it doesn't need a lot of gas, doesn't need a lot of maintenance. Yeah, it doesn't need a lot of maintenance. It's a problem with some car dealerships because they make most of their money on maintaining cars, not on selling cars.
just took my 2005 Bennett to the dealer. Yeah, that was after I had took it to my because of my husband's been really installing an extra
Let us enter into worship with the words of Richard S. Gilbert. We bid you welcome, who come with weary spirit seeking rest, who come with troubles that are too much with you, who come hurt and afraid. We bid you welcome, who come with hope in your heart, who come with anticipation in your step, who come proud and joyous. We bid you welcome, who are seekers of a new faith, who come to probe and explore, who come to learn. We bid you welcome, who enter this hall of homecoming, who have found here room for your spirit, who find in this people a family. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you welcome. Come, let us worship together. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit to join our voices in our opening hymn, number 145 in the gray hymnal, as Tranquil Streams. And with this is a reminder that masks are no longer required while singing.
Shall we Please remain standing as Virginia Voigt lights our chalice. In the 12th century, Hildegard of Bingen wrote, "I am that great and fiery force, sparkling in everything that lives, in shining of the river's course, in greening grass that glory gives." Let this flame that we now light remind us of the great and fiery force that is life, and that this force is to be found in each and every one of us.
Which rested alongside the wet river. And the surface of its still waters were reflected the incredible buildings of the Sanders. Sanders, as you might expect, sculpted everything out of sand. They dyed the sand in all the colors of the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. With their top secret blue, they shaped and molded the sand. The city of sand was beautiful. Towers, walls, and marionettes glide to the sky in colorful sandscapes. Sand sculptures of ducks flew. Sand water buffalo grunted, and sand harps seemed to play themselves as the centuries rolled by. The Sanders were artists. They were great artists, but they were not very kind, not to each other, and certainly not to the dusters who lived among the ruins of the high, dusty hill outside of town. The dusters rarely tried to make anything beautiful because they were too busy surviving, and they were very good at that. They could build a house out of just about anything. It was said that if they had to, they could even squeeze water from a stone. For as long as anyone could remember, the Sanders lived by the river, building their great sand buildings, while the dusters did their best to survive in the dust. The Sanders looked down on the dusters, of course, for being so dusty and simple. Dusters weren't even allowed to set foot in the city of sand because they might dirty it. But one year, just as the harvest festival arrived, the river began to rise. The water rose, and for no reason anyone could see. Not even the oldest sander or duster had seen such a thing happen before. At first, the Sanders found it amusing, but then, as the water lapped at the sand walls at the edge of town, their amusement turned to fear. And then the water began to spill over the edges of the sand walls like water from an overfull bathtub. That's when the Sanders discovered something they really wished they'd known before. The secret glue they used to hold the sand together dissolved in water. Suddenly, the whole city, that glorious, sparkling rainbow of a city, began to collapse just as surely as a sandcastle collapses when the tide comes in. The Sanders slept in the open for the first time that night. When they woke in the morning, the water had receded, but their city was gone. Where the river's edge had been rimmed with beautiful gardens and delicate walls of sand, there remained nothing but a huge, unsightly tangle of driftwood. The Sanders wept, "What will become of us?" they cried. From above, the dusters looked on, their faces unreadable. Some of them pointed down at the Sanders and held whispered conferences. Then, in a large bunch, they came down the hill towards the devastated city. The Sanders didn't know what to expect. After so many years of having been treated cruelly, were the Dusters coming down to gloat? Instead, the Dusters quietly divided into work parties by the riverside. They pulled apart the tangled driftwood and sorted it by size and shape. And then they started building. Sanders may be snobs, but they do admire cleverness. They looked on in amazement as the clever Dusters began to shape that seemingly useless driftwood into simple, sturdy buildings. They watched carefully, and soon they started helping out, learning as they went. When the red sun sank, they worked straight on through the night by starlight. They worked the next day, too, Dusters and Sanders alike, caught up in the thrill of building something new as the rebuilt city began to rise on the floodplain. As the buildings rose sturdily, the Sanders came into their own, teaching the Dusters how to carve and decorate the wood so that it was not only sturdy, but beautiful. The Dusters were great at raw building, but they had never paid much attention to beauty. They had so much fun that they kept right on building, even after there were enough houses for all the Sanders. They finished just as the harvest moon began to rise in the east. The Dusters brought down all the food they had and threw a great harvest feast. Their foods were not spicy, delicate, or syrupy like the fancy foods the Sanders loved, but all the Sanders' spices and syrups had been lost in the flood. Besides, an empty stomach and good company can make even the simplest foods taste divine. Altogether, they feasted on seeds, roots, berries, and pancakes made of ground nuts as stories and songs passed like lazy birds through the night air. The Dusters never left. It felt right to be together. And so, they became one people, and they named their new city Driftwood, so they would always remember where they came from. The Dusters and Sanders lived close but remained separate. Once tragedy struck, they came together to help rebuild a city. Working together, they learned about each other, heard each other's stories, learned each other's talents, and soon they became friends. Like those in the story, let us each welcome others into our lives, even those of whom we have passed judgment, and accept one another for just who we are. Thanks for listening. Please remain seated for our musical response, The More We Get Together. The words are printed in your order of service. In the silence that follows the spoken prayer, you are invited to come forward and light a candle for any joys or concerns you hold in your heart this morning. Spirit of love and life, source of all that is, we bring you here today as in everyday joys in our hearts and sorrows in our souls. In this space made holy by our presence, in this sanctuary made sacred by communal worship, may we hold one another in joy and in pain, in love and in heartbreak, in sorrow and in celebration. For this moment, for this hour, know that you are safe, welcomed, and cherished. However tired, however weary, there is space for you here. However sorrowful, however anxious, we bid you welcome. Spirit of love, remind us we are bound intimately together with all that is sacred and holy, with all that is beautiful, vibrant, and joyful, with the earth and all her glory, with the ancestors and those yet to come. We are bound together with anyone who has ever loved. Source of all that is, remind us to be curious, to wonder about one another, to ask simple questions, to share stories of times past, tales of joy and lament. For to wonder and to question is to love. Rest in this space, breathe in this sanctuary, discover solace in the company of kindred souls. In this space, you are welcome, you are loved. Blessed be, and amen. I now light a final candle for all that we hold in our hearts and in our minds this morning. Know that your community is here to help, as am I. Please reach out with any needs.
In just a few minutes, as a ritual of gathering and of deepening community, we will merge our waters together and share our respective stories. And so also now, as a ritual of gathering and of deepening community, and so that we may support our church and its wider concerns, let us merge our treasures together. For those of you watching the service online, you may contribute to a virtual offering plate using the donate button on our website or by mailing a check to the church office. Will the ushers please come forward? For all that you give, and for all that you do for our church community, we give thanks. Our first reading this morning comes from the book of Hebrews, chapter 13, verse 1. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unaware. And now, an unexpected email from one beloved to another. When we first met in high school, the status quo was to judge people by their appearance and other superficial aspects. The clothes they wore, who they hung out with, etc. From the day we met, you treated me as someone who was one of a kind, rather than someone who was an outcast or a misfit. You always seemed to see the good parts of me, beyond the superficial. Through this, you've helped me see this in other people and resist the status quo. This wasn't something that was only true with me. You acted this way around everyone. You didn't seem to care if they were popular or unpopular. You treated everybody with dignity and respect. For me, it took having someone treat me this way in order to understand how to do it myself. I'm not saying that I was a cruel or mean person, but it was something that I had never experienced before. You helped me change the way I viewed myself and other people. I viewed myself in a superficial way, but you helped me see the good. And through this, I was able to see others in a much deeper way. Please rise in body and spirit to join our voices in hymn number 328 from the Gray Hymnal, I sought the wood in summer.
My friend shared with me the text of this email, this gift, this life-affirming message, this beacon of hope and love and acceptance. It was her that received this email. "You helped me change the way I viewed myself and other people," the author of the email wrote. "You helped me see the good, and through that I was able to see others in a much deeper way." My friend was touched and surprised. This note was written 20 years after the initial encounter. She posed to me the question, what had she done that led to such a transformation? Both persons in the story had given me permission to share. It is clear from the email that the author, we'll call him Steve, had initially viewed himself as an outcast and outsider. And yet he left clues as to what changed his perceptions. My friend and I took time to sit and unpack the words on her laptop screen, reminiscing on times past. My beloved friend saw Steve as a full person, fuller than he ever saw himself. She engaged with him, entirely curious, asking him questions that allowed him to divulge to her who he truly was. She offered him radical welcome into her life, and he accepted this, and her kindness and her innate curiosity changed Steve's interaction with himself and with the world. She welcomed Steve, merely welcomed him just as he was, into her life in radical, profound, and yet powerfully simple, unassuming ways. What is so utterly beautiful about welcome? It is the gateway through which each person's humanity is brought to life, treasured, celebrated, each deemed worthy and deserving of goodness, kindness, and love. Welcome is formulaic in a way. We must first ground ourselves in curiosity, always wondering about one another, stripping ourselves of indifference, judgment, or animosity. We are then called to the spiritual practice of asking about one another's stories, asking holy questions of strangers and friends alike. What brings you joy? How do you fill your days? What do you need in this moment? It is an invitation to love who you are, no matter how broken, how insecure, how distraught, no matter how joyful, how inspired, how full, or any combination thereof. You are welcome in my heart, my life, my church. My vocation as a minister invites me to ask questions of each of you, curious of your spirit, your soul, your journey, your pain, your joy. How is your heart, I ask? And in hearing your responses, I feel a great honor journeying through life with each of you, curious, always curious. This is why I am a minister. And yet one does not need to be clergy to embrace this practice of love. I want to take a moment to offer a caveat. There are those who have done us and others great harm, who are deeply immersed in isms and in detrimental hate. Those who, for myriad reasons, cannot be a part of our lives or share in our love or are welcome in our doors. This sermon is not for those anomalies, but for the masses, the vast array of us. Let us now return to love. We can repeat the mantra, we bid you welcome, but unless we deeply contemplate the phrase, its meaning is empty, the sentiment lost as soon as the words leave our lips. What does it mean to bid all welcome? It is to embrace those whom society has shunned, ostracized, ignored, those who face violence and discrimination, the marginalized, indigenous persons, black persons, the impoverished, the ill, the disabled. What is your story beyond appearance, beyond prejudice, beyond innate assumptions and implicit bias? Who are you as a person, not an archetype? To engage in welcome is sometimes to ask those questions that foster solidarity, as one's pain is echoed in the story of the other, hearts and souls bearing similar hardships and sorrows, love fostered as broken hearts mirror one another. It is also, and perhaps sometimes the hardest practice, to welcome those we disagree with. An opportunity to build bridges, to embrace differences, to inquire about that which fosters opposition, animosity, anger. Denying those simple and easy emotions of dislike and disregard, and instead do that radical work of curiosity, love, and welcome. To simply offer, tell me more. It is a tenet of our faith that we are held together, all of us, in our interdependent web of life. In ways well beyond our sense perceptions, we are connected to one another, to the earth and all she offers, to the sacred, whatever that may be, to the broken, the lost, the sorrowful, to the prosperous, the celebrated, the content. We are held together. That is inevitable. But will these strands, what I liken to the threads of a spider web, will they bind us together in hate or in love, in obligation or compassion, in animosity or curiosity? Is that which binds us to all that is, was, and ever be life-giving or life-taking? Who we are and what we do ripples out far beyond those living things within our grasp, reverberating out to countless souls we will never meet. Do we send to the edges of this planet we call home curiosity, welcome, and love? Or do we cloak the world one action at a time in hate, judgments, and animosity? I invite us to be cognizant of each decision we make, aware of this holy, eternal, persistent web. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 1 offers us the phrase, "Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unaware." I pull from this phrase of biblical insight and wisdom two different reflections on welcome and love. What does it mean in our faith to entertain angels? In my theology, we each contain a spark of the divine, a flame of the holy, a piece of us directly connected to the sacred. We are each, in a way, an angel, both those aware and unaware. And in practicing radical hospitality, we welcome not only the finite, but the infinite, the great mystery, the source of all that is. My second reaction: if we neglect to show hospitality to strangers, we likewise choose to ignore and judge all that is good, loving, and eternal. We reject the beauty of nature, the warmth of that spark within, the love that saturates all that surrounds us. This is what we reject in indifference and animosity. What I hope to impart here, alongside the wisdom of welcome, is the importance of story. After adopting the spiritual practice of curiosity and inquiry, we are offered those holy questions. What brings you to life? What are your passions? And in doing so, invite a narrative in response. A tale, an anecdote, wisdom, insights, personal history. Stories connect us to one another in intimate ways and foster relationship, reinforcing the strands of our web. Welcoming a person welcomes their stories, all of them. The wisdom has been embraced by many of the world's religions as they seek to bring lessons and insights to life, to move beyond commandments and doctrines and instead craft narration. Characters become animate and invite the devout one to be curious of the antagonists and the protagonists. The prophets invite us to see ourselves and our beloved in these stories made sacred through intention. Jesus embraced this in his parables. He commanded, "Love thy neighbor," a foundational message to those of many faiths, and yet this statement remains stale and empty when offered on its own. Instead, he crafted a story of a wounded man and his prescribed enemy. An injured and dying Jewish man lay on the side of the road. A Levite walked past him with complete indifference. A priest passed the dying one, himself a faith leader, and yet likewise paid no notice. It wasn't until a Samaritan passed, an enemy of the one on the ground, that he was offered compassion and care and life-saving kindness. I imagine the Samaritan offered an intimate question: "How can I help you?" And in doing so, welcomed the dying man, his enemy, into his life. We are not offered an order, a command, or a mandate, but an invitation for reflection, to ask questions of ourselves and connect with our own humanity. What character do I emulate in each of my days? How can I live as exemplified by the Samaritan? Will I help any suffering person, even my enemies? Buddhists likewise embrace the power of story. Born Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha was raised in a wealthy and privileged family. As he aged into his teenage years, he became uncomfortable with his affluent life and searched for a meaning beyond his walls, discovering the prevalence of sickness, old age, and death, the suffering we will all eventually encounter. He left his worldly comforts to become a wandering ascetic, engaging in extreme practices of austerity. One afternoon, engaged in meditation, his spiritual practice, he had what Buddhists call an awakening, leading to an immediate and profound understanding of the nature of suffering, its causes, its cessation, and the way leading to its cessation. This new knowledge led the Buddha to dedicate his remaining decades to teaching the lessons of his awakening, accumulating followers, and initiating a new faith tradition. Scholar Rupert Gethin offers that his story is not fully historical, nor was it meant to be fully historical, but a narrative meant to be a metaphor, an allegory, a symbol, a universal archetype, a story of all those who have been and will become Buddhas, and in a way, all of those in the Buddhist faith. This story does not dictate or command live a holy life, but offers a protagonist who has done so. The narrative offers a plot, a man exposed to suffering, choosing a religious life, acquiring wisdom, and bringing his insights to the world. A story that simultaneously humanizes one of the world's prophets and offers a roadmap for a devout life. We are, again, posed important questions. How can I live a life steeped in faith, compassion, dedication, and meaning-making? How can a commitment to spiritual practice change my life? Let us bring this back to the tenets and stories of our own faith, our commitment to welcome dignity, worthiness, love, and interdependence to story. We each have life-saving narratives of our faith or are in the process of crafting one in this moment. That is why we are here today. I have shared with you my story, finding a faith that espoused universal salvation after losing a beloved to suicide. So I ask a question of you. How are you changed by engaging with all things sacred? How are you changed by the curiosity that love fosters? Our faith reminds us of the inherent sanctity we hold within angels, each of us worthy of curiosity and welcome, worthy of love, connected. So may we extend our hands and our hearts in simple and profound acts of love, of welcome, asking even, what is your name? May we journey for a moment in the shoes of Steve, the author of the email we unpacked. May we embody his life-changing journey, his discovery of compassion, self-worth, and a generous love that he offered those in his midst. Those changes that can simply become by being welcome. And may we bring all of this with us today during water communion as we share our stories, having been invited to bring with us the water that represents in our hearts places of welcome, of celebration, of laughter or lament, of love, of memories. This is the day of ingathering as we return from the pause of summer to offer one another, friends and strangers alike, radical welcome into this new church year. Welcome into this space, into our faith, into our very hearts, souls, and minds, accepting one another for just who we are. May we bring to this sanctuary and this moment a spiritual practice of curiosity and inquiry, and enter a blessed time of storytelling. We bid you welcome. May it be so, and amen. In this moment, I invite you into a sacred ritual. In just a minute, I will invite you to come forward and empty some, but not all, of your water into a sacred shared vessel. Each of you brought with you a story to accompany your water. Once up front, you may share your tale with the congregation at this microphone, share your story with me alone, or simply release your water into our bowl as we hold each other in love, light, and prayer, in welcome and curiosity. If you do not have water with you today, we have a pitcher up front containing maintaining water from this building, our worship space, our holy, sacred space. You are invited to pour this water into our communal vessel and imbue it with the meaning you find within these walls. Once we have collected the water, I will add water from years past. Through this act, we are connected with all of those who have come and gone in this beloved community. We will then join together to bless this water, this life force made treasured, made sacred by our treasured narratives. This water is sacred. If you are joining us on Zoom, I invite you to type your stories into the chat box at this time. After we have heard the stories of those in this space, I will read aloud the stories from our beloveds on Zoom. To those gathered in the sanctuary, please come forward.
Traveling story because I've been home all summer, but okay. But I was glad to share the summer with all of everyone that came during the summer.
A wonderful little place at our retirement community, Charlestown, is an outdoor terrace with a cascade and a little pond with goldfish. And we simply brought water from that pond, which represents all of us at Charlestown, but unites us with everyone else, because so many sit by that pond and enjoy the cascade and the fish, and everyone else. So thank you very much.
This is water from an artificial creek in our backyard that attracts the birds that drink and bathe in it, as well as squirrels that come to drink it. Even deer come to drink at it. So it's a nice connection with the wildlife in our area.
Just celebrating swimming pools in the summer, and just how I remember as a kid, and even now, just how good they feel, and how beautiful they can be.
I actually brought water from my kitchen tap. Reason being that the most significant thing that happened to me this past year, there were two things. One, my father passed away in February. The second thing is my partner and I moved into our new home, from where this water is from, which was 2 doors down from him. And so I was able to be there for him at the end of his life. And now I'm there for my mom. So that's why I brought water from my kitchen tap. This is water from Banks Head, North Carolina. On the Outer Banks, our families had a tradition of going there for many years, and before that, always to the ocean. And so this ties together the generations, my parents and my children and me. This water represents a lovely trip my husband and I had exploring some national parks this summer and visiting with family, some family I hadn't seen in many, many years. And that song where we sang how true a thing is beauty really rang true with me and all the people and places we interacted with.
This is from Ocean City. 5 days at Ocean City with the waves and the sand and the sun, and the temperature was perfect.
Water is representative of a camping trip my husband and I recently took. We often go into the woods. It's our shared spiritual practice, and this time was the first long time doing it in a tent. And we had a great time together, and I cherish that.
This is water from the lake at Buffalo Gap, where we went to the Spiral Heart Witch Camp, and we also brought a little water from a prior year.
This summer I'd gone with my sisters up to the shores of Lake Ontario, where my mother's family lived for years, and they had their 125th family reunion. And it was a delight to see my cousins. The numbers have gone down over the years, and I remember going to the reunion when I was a child, and every memory was precious then. I'm so happy we could go again and see everyone.
This is water from our travels west this summer. First was our annual road trip to Chicago, where we visit our in-laws, my in-laws. And this was our first year without my father-in-law, so our focus was on supporting my mother-in-law in her loneliness and her grief, and practical support to help her prepare to move out here and be close to us. And then some unexpected travels. We had a couple of emergency trips to Oregon to mental health issues with my son. And water's kind of symbolic because he loves the water, and there's a creek there that I think was instrumental in his healing. And also, one of the things that he was working on was a fish tank, and when he was not doing well, the fish tank reflected that. And then as he started to heal, the fish tank was getting clarity as he was at the same time.
Water from my kitchen.
What a blessing to hear all your stories. I'm grateful for everything you shared and all else that remains in your heart and your mind that was a tender time. I'm now going to reach out and see if any of our beloveds on Zoom have a story to share with us. From Julie. My water is from a restaurant bathroom, one of several places where I've enjoyed a meal with a chanting friend this past summer. From Sharon Rowick. From a trip to Crystal Bridges in Bentonville, I don't know what they are, Bentonville, Arizona, I believe, with a friendship force group special. Thanks to Emily for her compassion and empathy. We have Julie again. Oh, Julia. Thank you, Julia. Yes, my water, oops. Sorry about this. From Julia. My water is from my kitchen tap, from my new home. Thank you all, and I'm glad we could hear everyone's stories this morning. I now add to this sacred water, that from years past, binding us together through the generations. May we offer love through our memories. May we now bless the water that has been made sacred by our stories. Join me in a responsive reading, lifting up the words of Rama Hamami. This water is sacred. It is made sacred. Yes. 1 moment, please. This water is sacred. It is made sacred by the many hands that have poured it with intention and love, the many stories that each drop contains, the many lives surrounding it in this unique moment, connected by commitment and faith. This water is sacred. May it continue to flow through this community with shining reflections of the unique gifts that flow through each of its members.
This water is sacred.
May it continue to nurture this community with sustaining hope that we journey together through ripples of growth and change.
This water is sacred.
May it continue to bless this community with loving reminders of our collective responsibility to one another and the world.
This water is sacred.
May its ripples be a reminder that the changes and growth within this community bring movement and transformation to the world beyond our doors.
This water is sacred.
May its purity offer grace to our community and the willingness to forgive ourselves and one another when we make mistakes.
This water is sacred.
In moments when we are confused or uncertain, may it bring us clarity of purpose and commitment.
This water is sacred.
In moments when the reservoirs of hearts and spirits are drained by sorrow or pain, may it nourish them with the knowledge that we are surrounded by a deep and abundant love.
This water is sacred.
Blessed be, and amen. I invite us, after we have left this space and time together, to engage in one more ritual. I invite all of us, those joining us in person, and those with us on Zoom, to pour your remaining water into the earth. The water will seep below the vegetation, entering into all that is, bound together through our interdependent web, to all of nature, all living things, all things sacred, to all of us. Our water, all of our water, will bind us together in holy, eternal, and beautiful ways. We remain one beloved community across time and space. Please rise in body or in spirit to join our voices in hymn number 1064 in the teal hymnal, Devote. Go in peace, and amen. And just